When I first started traveling solo in Europe, I thought language barriers would be my biggest challenge. Wrong. The real adjustments were completely different, and nobody warns you about them. Now I feel comfortable anywhere in Europe, and in this video, I'm sharing the practical details that made the difference. What really matters are the small practical things, the kind that don't sound exciting, but make a difference between a relaxed, confident trip and one that slowly wears you down. I'm covering everything from pacing to pickpockets, cash to cobblestones, 10 things that actually matter. One, pace matters more than plans. One of the biggest shifts I've made over the years is slowing down. It's tempting to string together 3 countries and 6 cities into 2 weeks. I've done that, but I don't do it anymore. Now I tend to choose one main base and explore outward from there. Short train rides, day trips, or even just wandering different neighborhoods. Spending at least 3 nights, even better 5, in one location saves time wasted in travel and checking in and out of accommodations. I also become familiar with the local transport in the area, restaurants, etc., and that makes the whole experience better. It's easier on the body, easier on the mind, and it leaves room for spontaneity. Last year, for example, I spent 5 days exploring Milan, Italy. There was lots to see in Milan, but I also spent 2 full days taking the train to Lugano, Switzerland and back, and also to Lake Como. I didn't have to take any luggage, and it was easy to get the train early in the morning and come back in the early evening. Perfect. Secondly, walking is certainly the default, so prepare for it. European cities reward walking. They also demand it. Cobblestones, uneven pavement, hills, staircases, and long museum corridors are all part of the deal. Comfortable, broken-in walking shoes matter far more than how stylish they look. I also build my days around walking in stages. Morning exploration, a break somewhere quiet, then a lighter afternoon or evening stroll. It isn't about limitations, it's about stamina. And if I get far away from my accommodation, I can always catch an Uber or a Bolt to get myself back without wearing out. 3, using public transportation is usually easier than it looks. Public transportation across Europe is generally excellent. Trains, trams, buses, metros, but it works on local rules. Some tickets need to be validated before your journey, for example. This applies to some local buses and many trains. If you haven't validated your ticket and the conductor checks when you're on the train, well, you could be fined. Just make sure what the rules are. Some ticket machines don't accept bank debit cards, especially tied to banks outside Europe, but they will accept credit cards like MasterCard or Visa. I find that MasterCard is a little bit more widely accepted in Europe. American Express often is refused. Some stations don't announce platforms until the last minute, so keep your eye on the departures board and be ready to move when the platform is posted. I've learned to give myself buffers, extra time for connections, no tight transfers, and a backup plan if something changes. As a solo traveler, that little margin of safety makes the whole day feel calmer. I've made another video that covers the ETIAS, the new entry requirement starting in 2026 for travelers from non-EU countries, along with important reminders about passport expiry dates and validity requirements. There's quite a bit to cover on that topic, so I'll link that video in the description below and at the end screen of this one. 4, cash still has a role. Europe is increasingly cashless now, but not entirely. Small cafes, bakeries, public toilets, ferries, and rural areas sometimes still want cash. I always carry a small amount of cash with me. I get some euros before I leave home, and quite frankly, over the last few years, I've never had to top up from an ATM, where exchange fees and bank fees add to the cost. It's worth remembering that not every European country uses the euro. 3 commonly visited European countries that have their own currency that I can think of are Croatia, Switzerland, and Norway. This is one of those small details that's easy to overlook until you're standing at a counter trying to pay in euros with a line behind you, and they only accept Swiss francs. Trust me, I've been there. 5, eating out is different, and that's not a bad thing. Dining rhythms in Europe don't always match North America. Lunch can be earlier and shorter. Breakfast might be a croissant and a coffee that you take standing at a bar rather than sitting at a table. Sometimes if you sit to eat at a cafe like this, you pay more. Dinner is often later. An early dinner might be 7:30 p.m. Kitchens sometimes close between meal periods. More than once I found myself hanging around the front door of a pizzeria in Italy, having arrived around 7 and worrying a bit if the restaurant is not going to open until it starts to spring to life around 7:30. I've also learned not to assume free water. You buy a bottle of still or sparkling water to go with your meal. Free refills, although I usually don't anticipate that at home either, or tipping that works the same way as in North America. A few coins or rounding up is often enough, and there's sometimes already a service charge added to the bill. Now, if you're finding this helpful, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel and it encourages me to keep producing videos that are similar to this one. Number 6, expect smaller rooms and fewer amenities. Hotel rooms in Europe are often smaller, especially in historic buildings. Air conditioning isn't guaranteed. Elevators can be tiny, a bit of an adventure with more than one person and luggage, or even non-existent. Bathrooms can be creative. Before booking, I look carefully at recent reviews, room photos if they're available, and what's not mentioned in the listing. As a solo traveler, I don't need much, but I do want basic comfort and quiet and a safe neighborhood. And 7, safety is mostly about awareness, not fear. Europe is generally very safe, but crowded tourist areas attract pickpockets and distractions. I don't carry all my money and cards in one place. I leave a credit card and some cash tucked away safely at my accommodation in case I need it sometime. I stay alert in busy squares and transit hubs and always keep an eye on my belongings. I'm especially cautious if someone approaches me with a helpful story or a clipboard. At night, I stick to well-lit streets and areas that feel lived in rather than deserted. I trust my gut. If I start to suspect that I'm getting a little bit too far off the beaten track or the situation could turn uncomfortable, well, I head back to somewhere where I feel more connected and safer. Having said that, I've wandered in lots of little European alleyways at night where I've still felt very comfortable. And I've never experienced any security problems other than being pickpocketed once in a busy metro station in Paris. None of these precautions feel stressful, they're just habit. 8, daily logistics can be, well, different. Some of the small daily realities that catch people by surprise are paid public toilets, another reason to keep a few coins with you, shops closing early or closing on Sundays, and afternoon closures in some regions. Businesses, including shops and restaurants, might shut down for a couple of hours in the early afternoon for a midday break. I've learned to plan errands around local rhythms rather than fighting them. Once I stopped expecting everything to work like home, travel became much easier. 9, power, chargers, and simple tech. Europe uses different plugs and higher voltage, 220 volts. Most modern electronics are dual voltage, but the right adapter matters. And the UK, Ireland, Italy, and Switzerland all do things slightly differently. Now I travel with fewer devices, fewer cables, and one reliable universal adapter. Simplicity matters more than redundancy. Number 10, why all this matters when you're solo and older? Well, none of these things are dramatic on their own. But when you're traveling solo, especially as a senior, small stresses add up faster, and small comforts matter more. The goal isn't to see everything. It's to enjoy the experience, feel confident moving through unfamiliar places, and come home energized rather than exhausted. Every trip teaches me something new, even after years of traveling. What's changed most isn't Europe, it's how I travel through it. If you're traveling solo later in life, a bit of planning, a slower pace, and realistic expectations go a long way. And honestly, that's part of the pleasure. Safe travels. See you next time.